Nature's time on Earth is infinite. Nature is the flow of energy. So as long as there is energy, there will be nature. And the things in nature persist to the extent that they abide by the laws of nature, the laws of the design flow. So humanity right now is at an inflection point, and I believe that point is fundamentally about our relationship with nature. Right now we live in fear. We make a lot of decisions, most of our decisions, I would say, based in fear. And, I mean that on an individual level throughout the day, but I'm really talking about on the scale of humanity in a much bigger way. The systems we build, the laws we create, the things that we do are, hello, Teresa, are really done from a place of fear. And that fear fundamentally, in the large scale way, stems from the man against nature belief that has been so much a part of human existence that we don't even notice it, let alone question it. It's just taken for granted, even by people who don't intellectually agree with it, still essentially take it for granted for the most part. I find myself doing it even sometimes. So we have this huge problem right now of the man against nature coloring everything that we do. And this belief, this narrative really needs to be eradicated for us to have an inflection point and change direction and do something different for humanity. If humanity can choose. We can choose to become extinct, not anytime soon, but over time we can choose to become extinct, or we can choose. Humanity has that luxury of making the choice to stay grounded. We can choose to be here infinitely as a part of nature. And the things, being a part of nature does not mean letting go of the things that make us human. It means that the things that make us human are supposed to be a part of nature. So we need to start looking differently. And I think the best way to eradicate, to even notice this narrative in the first place, is to look energetically. Look at the energetics of behavior. Look at the exchange of energy that's always happening, because the belief is so deep that we literally don't notice it now. But if you start following the path of energy, what's moving and where does it move? What happens? When you follow the trades of energy, you get a very, very different picture. And that's what takes us back to the root of nature. Nature is the flow of energy. It is just flow systems for energy. That's all that it is. So just some examples of how, of the deepness of this. Take COVID, for instance, the virus, right? I mean, just the word virus just conjures up fear in humans in general. There is this invisible thing that's going to come and get us. It is out to get us. It is trying to get us, and we must kill it. We must fight back the war against the virus. We must have vaccines. We must have drugs. We must do these things. And it's very... The fear spread like a virus. I might do a whole live on that. It's more like a virus spreads like fear. But anyway, even people who want to work more with nature, most of them fundamentally accept that there is a virus out there trying to get us. And I'm not saying that people aren't dying of something. I'm not a crazy lunatic. Like, people are dying. There's something going on. I'm just saying that there's no evil plot of nature, of viruses in nature, to get humans. And it's very interesting because I looked at this just energetically, not as not as a doctor or a scientist, but just as, someone who looks at energy, flows of energy. And we understand the microbiome. There's trillions of viruses and bacteria and all these things in the air and in the gut and in our water and in space, and they're everywhere. I mean, there's so much that we can't possibly think that there's a particular virus and everything will be fine, right? We're just beyond that, but we still have that feeling, that energetic feeling. But when I looked at the virus energetically, I immediately said, what's flowing? Where is it flowing? How is it flowing? And I came up with, pure theory that as an RNA virus, what's flowing is information. It's genetic information. It's not hijacking our DNA and causing us to die. It's clipping. It's taking pieces of information and dispersing them, sharing them, right? And so if you even look at the shape of the virus, of coronaviruses, of RNA type viruses are shaped, it's in nature, I call it the circle with spikes, right? And you see this shape repeated all over nature in many, many ways, where there is something internal to protect. In the case of the virus, it's genetic information. And the spikes do two things. They project energy outward. So they can project energy to keep bad things away from that important material. But they also can serve to project that material into something else, right? So, and this virus is floating through the air. And anyway, I can't go into it because this would be a very, very long, short little talk. But what's interesting is just purely looking energetically of, what's flowing and where is it flowing and how is it flowing. I came up, with an idea that the virus is here to help. There's something important to learn. It's helping us change our genetic code. Most of the time it works. Every now and then something else happens and, it doesn't work. Interestingly, there are many really incredible doctors. Zach Bush is the best thinker on this, in my opinion, on this topic, bar none. But there are many others that are thinking very similarly to him. They're coming out and saying exactly that, but they have all the medical and science advice behind that. But that just comes from me just being able to look energetically instead of via a narrative, an ancient narrative of man against nature. And so the virus is one example of where it's very, very, very deep. Even people who believe in connecting with nature are still scared of this virus and pretty sure that it's going to get us. I'm being gotten by grass right now. Another example would be the Triune Brain, right? I know probably a lot of people even in this group are going to hate me for saying this, but it does not make sense energetically. The Triune Brain is something like so many things. The idea of it, it was Paul McLean, developed the idea with all the best intentions, and from his heart and trying to understand things. And it's kind of a neat idea, and people have adopted it just tremendously all over in science and psychology, and just, the average Joe on the street pretty much knows about the lizard brain and the triune brain. But energetically, it makes no sense whatsoever. That this core of your brain that everything runs through, that all the pathways in your spinal column run through and into the rest of your brain, and that is deeply connected to all the rest of the brain, is somehow some separate thing. And this again is man against nature. It wasn't intended in that, but it's essentially there because that's just how we automatically view the world. So it's this idea that nature is at its core, fear-based. It's full of man-eating lions and full of bad behavior and full of immoral things that we'll do. We have to rise above it and become human, and it's really rooted in that. If you really think about how that came about, it's very much rooted in that. And so the whole triune brain thing, by the way, people have done beautiful work, like Peter Levine, his work on trauma and things. Very, very beautiful. And he claims he bases it on the idea of the triune brain. But what he's doing and what he's saying are two different things. Energetically, what he's doing, phenomenal. His intellectual explanation of it, not so phenomenal, because it's mired in this man against nature narrative unwittingly. Another example is sustainability. we will perish at the hands of sustainability. This is, right now, when I say sustainable, this word has become so tainted I can't even hardly talk about it effectively, but sustainable right now is defined politically, not via nature's rules. Virtually everything that you hear about sustainable is a political definition of sustainable. It's got nothing to do with how nature actually works, because the people that are developing these systems and these policies and all this stuff do not study nature. They haven't studied it in the past, and they certainly don't know any of the new understanding of nature. They don't know about the constructal law. They don't know apparently about the microbiome and everything else. They don't know these things. So that's sustainable is political, but they pass it off on well-meaning, good-hearted people as moral and right and truly sustainable. But anything that by nature's definition is sustainable, by that definition, we say it cannot support human life. And this is the ultimate man against nature. If it is sustainable in nature, by definition, it cannot support man. Wow. No wonder we're in trouble, right? So this is so deep and so strong. And because of that, we're going down paths, we're trying to force people down paths like eliminating animals from the food chain. And I'm not talking about how you feel morally about eating animals. I'm talking about nature's way of being, eliminating animals from the food chain, moving to insect protein, essentially factory farming of plants, which has all the same problems as factory farming of animals. Just forcing people, because we have that fear of man against nature, and that it's a battle. And we want to control it, so we want to narrow it. We want to eliminate things. We want to remove variables. We want to have this sense of control, which is the exact opposite of why nature will persist forever, as long as there's Earth, and why we won't, because we're doing the exact opposite thing of what's necessary. Nature persists because of the freedom to be complex and diverse, because of that freedom. So basically, in almost any conversation that anybody has about anything, I could probably pick out a line that fundamentally is about man against nature. And it's unwitting. People don't realize it. They're not trying to. In fact, they're trying not to be that way, most of the people that I know. But still, it's so deep. It's still in us. And so, that comes up in conversations about race and about freedom and about, food and about everything, about gardening, about jobs and everything else. It's just like a part of the human fabric right now. And the inflection point that we're at is not about COVID. It's not about race. It's not about an impending famine, which could be. When I say impending, I don't mean that it has to happen, but if we stay on this course, it will. It's not about those individual things. It is fundamentally, this inflection point is about changing the narrative of man against nature, man versus nature. It's a point in time where we have to choose to either keep going to where we're going to extinct ourselves or start going down the path where we can be here infinitely. And it's not one decision and then it's done. That's a decision that we make every day forevermore. But we're on the scale of humanity, we're at an inflection point where we can go one direction or the other. And as soon as we start going towards that direction, and remember, that doesn't mean denying our humanity. It means incorporating our humanity in nature. We're supposed to be here as humans, not as other types of animals, as the things that humans do. Incorporating that in. As soon as we eradicate this view that is so deep, as soon as we eradicate it, everything will start changing. We don't even have to fully eradicate it. We just have to go down that path. And our political systems will change. And our how we farm will change. And our idea of psychology will change. And our how we use money might change. I mean, everything is rooted in that core problem. And it's all going to change once we consciously choose to go the other way and start bringing awareness to this man against nature energy that is just embedded in humanity right now, so deeply embedded. So what we need to do right now is become aware. Awareness cures. We need to become aware of it. And so my question right now is, where do you see it? That you maybe hadn't seen it before. If this triggered a new thought, it can be just, where do you see it? But ideally, you would answer back in here, where do you see it that you hadn't thought of before? And it can be anything from a personal one-on-one conversation to worldwide. It doesn't matter. We have to start detecting it everywhere, across the board, at all levels. Raise it up in our awareness, because fundamentally we don't want it. We know it's bad for us. We know it's to our peril. So all we have to do is become aware of it, and it'll start going away on its own. So that's my question. That was a long spiel, but that's my question is, where do you see it right now in your life? Thank you for listening.